Philadelphians are definitely coming for me for this one. Hey everyone, welcome back to my Earth Friendly Kitchen. I'm Maria, your host, and today we are going to be making Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. So we're going to do, depending on where you go, Philly cheesesteak sandwiches can mean something different to you. So, the original, if you think about traditional Philly cheesesteak, if you go to Philadelphia, where it originated, then you would find it just to be thin steak, thin sliced steaks with usually ribeye of some kind with onions and cheese, usually cheese whiz or American cheese. But if you go to the West Coast and if you're from California, then you're looking at a Philly cheesesteak that has onions and peppers on it, and also possibly provolone or cheese whiz. But I like to make what we call an Italian cheesesteak, where we do onions and mushrooms, mostly because my husband's not a huge pepper fan, and like bell peppers, so doesn't really like the flavor of them. So we do onions and mushrooms and mozzarella. So that kind of makes it like an Italian cheesesteak. So that's what we're going to do today. But you can make it, the basics are all pretty much the same. And so you can make it however you see fit in your kitchen based on what you guys like. You can add or take away from this recipe very, very easily. So I'm just going to thin slice up some onions here. We're not going to dice them because they're going to caramelize really nicely in the pan. And I'm just going to leave it like that. And then we're going to chop up some mushrooms as well. Now I got the baby bellas. You could use button mushrooms if you want to. I'm going to stick my stems here. You can see this is nice and getting full. My scrappy broth bag. That's going to be used today. Probably I'll make some so I can empty out my bag and do some more cooking and get my scraps. But Philly cheesesteaks actually have an interesting history. In Philadelphia, where, we're on the East Coast, so we know a little bit of East Coast trivia around here. In Philadelphia, if you've ever been, there are two cheesesteak places that are absolute rivals. One of them is called Pat's King's cheesesteak place, and the other one is Genos. And Pat's was there first, technically. They started in like the 1920s or 1940s, and then Genos came in like the 1960s, and they moved right across the street. So that created a significant rivalry between the two places, both claiming that their steak is the best in Philadelphia. So it's an interesting, rivalry. It's been going on for many decades, but I've actually had the privilege of eating at both places. And I don't know, this is probably an unpopular opinion, guys, but I like them both. I do. So I don't know. I think that they both have their interesting, flavors, and cheesesteak is pretty good at both of them. So I guess it just matters on whose side you're on for that. There was a big rivalry with Rocky Balboa when because he ate at Pat's, Sylvester Stallone, when they were filming the Rocky movies. So that kind of created like a big deal for a little while when they filmed that. So a little fun movie trivia for you too. So, but no matter where you go, wherever you go, especially if you make these at home, you really can just add, the basics, whether you do onions and peppers, onions, mushrooms, and peppers, or, change it up even further for you. So I'm just going to chop all these mushrooms, and I'm just making nice slices because these are going to break down and, get really nice and small and shrivel up. So it looks like a lot. It's about 1.5 pounds of the mushrooms that I got. And this was obviously one whole, largish yellow onion. But I'm just popping out the stems so that they kind of cut nice and easily. And like I said, we'll use those in our scrappy broth. But, like I said, you could use the white buttons. I like the baby bellas just because I like their flavor more. I think they bring a little bit more add to the dish. But this goes by pretty quickly, this prep. And we're also going to grate up our mozzarella now because we'll just get everything in its place, right? Put our mise en place, get ready for us. And we are going to take a little bit of a break once we get the onions and mushrooms going, because they do take a good, probably like 10 minutes or so to really, caramelize down and kind of shrivel down to where we want them to be. So, that's going to be like the bulk of our cooking time is going to be that, waiting for that to happen. And I've already pre-washed these mushrooms, by the way. I just ran them all under, cold water in the sink, and I did run them with the stems on because I use the stems in my broth. So if you're gonna, if you wanted to take the stems off first, if you're not gonna use them at all, then might make it easier for you. But this way, all the dirt is off for everything I need. Okay. Oh, don't try to escape the pool. Everybody gets in. And if you notice, I'm wearing a new apron that I got. Very exciting. I know I usually wear my branded Earth Friendly Kitchen apron, but I tend to teach nurses and nurse practitioner students from the local college by my job. And one of my students this last semester, after her clinical rotation, bought me this apron, which put two of my loves together, Harry Potter and cooking. So the wand chooses the wizard, and I love it. And I'm thinking about getting a tattoo of this little design because I think it's just that cute and very on brand for me in a lot of ways. So anyways, I'm sporting my new wear today. You guys see my logo all the time, so. And if you don't, subscribe to the channel so you can whenever you, want a new recipe like this. All right, so I'm going to use some mozzarella that I already have chopped up, and then I'll start another brand because I really want to use about half of a 16-ounce thing, and this is like a quarter of that. So I'm going to use 8 ounces total. So I'm going to just use up what I have because why wouldn't you, right? Old in first, or old out first, then new in. Of what you have. Not that this is old, because, we go through a lot of cheese around here. We make a lot of pizzas and stuff, But I do want to use about 8 ounces of mozzarella for the sandwiches, because you just want it to be nice and melty on top of everything after you're done cooking. It's going to melt really nicely in the oven. We'll stick it on like a quick broil for a few minutes, just to get it nice and toasted. Or if you have a toaster oven, you could use that too, for this dish. Okay, so I'm going to keep my cheese on this side because we're not using it just yet. And this is going to be my pan now. I'm getting a large kind of deep dish pan because the mushrooms are going to take up a lot of space at first, and then they're going to shrink down. But we're going to get started with some oil in the pan, about a quarter cup or so. And turn it on like a medium to high heat because we're going to saute these onions. All right, and just kind of break them up when you throw them in there. Obviously do this before the oil gets hot, guys, because you don't want to, oh, this guy, he tried to escape all the way in the back. And we're just going to let those go. We're just going to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt, to help kind of draw some of the moisture out. So a little bit of salt on the onions, probably about a quarter teaspoon or so. And then let's use our tongs today. Just kind of move these around. I always have to think about which utensils I'm going to use on which dish, because what's going to be easier for me to like put it together and dirty the least amount of utensils. Because why don't I want to do more dishes than we have to? I mean, am I right? So, all right. So for now, we're just going to let those onions kind of go down a little bit, sweat it out for about 3 minutes or so, and then we'll add the mushrooms in to join into the pool, and then everything can really saute together, and then that'll be it until we cook the steak. So be back in just a few minutes when we add the mushrooms. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so about 3 minutes has passed, and this is why we wanted to make sure that we brown some of the onions first, because we want to start getting that really nice caramelization on the onions that you just wouldn't get if you added the mushrooms in at the same time. The reason being is because the mushrooms are going to release a ton of water, and so you're going to have a very hard time to caramelize your onions at the same time you're, cooking your mushrooms, if that were the case. And I really wanted to get that nice browning in there. So literally just gonna add everybody back in the pool, and we're gonna let them cook up together. And I am mixing the onions with the onions, the onions with the onions, the onions with the mushrooms, so that way they have a nice even cook and they hit the bottom as well. And what's gonna happen is all the moisture is gonna start pulling out of these mushrooms. Then we're gonna wait until all the moisture is basically evaporated, until they're ready, and that's when we know they're gonna be nice and done. So once again, I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to just draw out some of the moisture, and this time I'm also gonna add some pepper because we want to season as it cooks. Okay, and a little bit of parsley. Probably about a half a teaspoon or so. Okay? And that's that. And we're going to let these cook up. And cook down, I should say. Cook up to cook down. And then we'll come back probably it'll take about 10 minutes or so for that to fully happen for these mushrooms, okay? So, see you in 10 minutes. Go do what you gotta do. Okay guys, so these have browned so nicely. If you take a look, a lot of the water has already evaporated. I'm gonna get this started a little bit, as the rest of this gets going. I'm gonna get our steak started. I'm also gonna hit my broiler on to get ready for when we're done and ready to put everything together and melt it all down good. Alright, so I'm gonna turn my stove top here on about medium heat, medium to high. And I like to use, I know that traditionally, like I said, people use ribeye steak or very thinly sliced ribeye, but I like to use these like steakums that you can find, as far as, whatever brand you get. I think this is just the brand of steakums, but you can get whatever brand you want. I'm not like sponsored by anybody by any means. And the reason I like them is because they come in these like slices that are just so easily to tear off. This one comes with 10 steaks, and that's pretty much what we need. But if you're making more, you can get one that has like 16 steaks. If you're making less, you can get the one that has like 6 steaks in it. And I literally just throw them in. These are defrosted for a bit. I've even thrown them in completely frozen, honestly, when I haven't, had the time to defrost, and they cook up just the same. And, this, I think, is a really great alternative to ribeye, because ribeye can be maybe a little expensive, right, when you purchase it. And these would be a cheaper alternative, which is also great. And because it has such few ingredients, between the steak, mushrooms and onions, cheese, and bread, what is that? Steak, mushrooms, onions, cheese, and bread, 5 ingredients, right, for this meal. I feel like if you wanted to go ahead and splurge on the ribeye, then, do it, right? Do the traditional way. But, I don't know. I always love being able to cut costs where available, and I want to show people what's possible, that you can still get good flavors out of, these alternatives that are, a little bit cheaper. You don't lose the value of the meal. I don't think, anyways. But you give me your opinion. If you try it out, let me know in the comments, so that way I can, see how you fare with these steakums. So you see how they just break up really nicely, and this just cuts into nice strips, for the sandwich, and just gets really everything just like a chopped sandwich almost, right? Like a chopped cheese, or chopped cheese is everywhere. Is that just a New York thing? I think it's just a New York thing, but I think people maybe on the West Coast have adopted it. So, anyways, and you want to season your meat as well. So today we're going to add, again, a little bit of salt. to season the meat. Now, you want to mimic the flavors, as always, that you measured with the mushrooms and onions. We're going to do some pepper. We're going to do another half a teaspoon of parsley. Okay. And then we'll do half a teaspoon of onion powder. And for the steak, because, I mean, it is an Italian cheesesteak, guys, we gotta have some garlic in there, right? A little garlic powder. I mean, you can't stop me, you know? I mean, there's just, you gotta, it's one of the staples. Italian cheesesteak. Now, I am going to try one of the mushrooms because so much water was leached out, and I know we added salt to help draw the water content out of the mushroom, but that water actually might have diluted the flavoring or the seasoning. So I am going to try one of the mushrooms here in a minute. See how that cooks up so quickly like that? To see if we need to add anything to these mushrooms. So now you can see pretty much all of the water is gone, which is really, really nice. And that's exactly what we're looking for. See, these onions would have never gotten so caramelized and beautiful had we added them originally. I'm just going to try. Really good. But we did lose some of the salt, the seasoning. So I'm just going to add a little bit more back. The actual seasoning, because the salt we originally put in really was just all about drying moisture out. And that's, you know, that's how when you're cooking, guys, this is how you have to kind of go through things, you know, taste it as you go. This is why salt is one of those very difficult things for people to really manage. This is dumb. Because everybody uses different types of salt. If you use coarse kosher salt versus table salt, right? Table salt, you're going to need a lot less than you would for the coarse kosher salt because it's going to penetrate easier because of the smaller, finer grain. But, you know, you just want to make sure you could always add more. You can't take it away. And once you add too much salt, sometimes the dish can be completely ruined. So, all right, I'm going to turn these off too. All right, so we've got our oven on broil. Obviously, broil heats up very fast. It's the hottest setting on your oven, essentially. I mean, mine has an option of broil low or high. I just put it on low and it works really well. But, you know, most ovens just have one setting. And so, you know, it's just one of those things. And what the difference between broil and bake is the heat generally comes from the bottom and circulates throughout the oven. Broil, the heat comes from the top. And so that's what we're looking for because we're really just wanting to melt the cheese and brown the bread a little bit because everything's cooked already, right? So I'm going to use these really beautiful, they're called Portuguese rolls that I find. You can pretty much use hoagie rolls or ciabatta bread, whatever you want for your sandwich. But, you know, we just try to stick to a nice, soft, kind of pillowy, you know, roll. And on the bottom, we start to assemble. So first we take some of our steak. Okay. And this is going to get us about 4 sandwiches or so with these size rolls. Depending on the size of your roll will depend on how many sandwiches you get. If you were doing this like for like a party, you do like one long like Italian loaf, right? Or French bread loaf. And then cut it up like for your guests. Well, these guys are trying to escape, guys. Put them in. All right, so just cover the bottom. Nice and healthy portions here. This is great for like a game day or, like I said, like a party with friends, having people, poker nights, you know. It's such a delicious meal. All right, beautiful. Just right there on top. And put these over here as well. A little bit more. This guy's a little bit bigger than the other guy. Okay, just like that, just on top. Again, so when we toss this in the oven, we're not looking to cook. We're looking to just melt the cheese and brown these little tops of bread. Now, some people will even add add like mayonnaise or butter on the top of the breads to give it even that extra kind of pizzazz or, you know, flavoring. But we think it's good enough with just the cheese and the meat. But if you want to add butter or mayo, I know mayo seems weird and then you put it in the oven, but all mayo is oil and eggs, right? Basically. So the oil is, you know, like butter is what's going to make that bread glisten if you were to do that. All right. So we're just going to pop these in to broil for maybe 2 minutes until that cheese melts. And I'm going to keep an eye on it because, it, you know, on broil, things are very hot and it can burn very quickly. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it for about 2 minutes, and then the YouTube magic will bring it back out and you'll be able to see all nice and gooey melty. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, so it has been about 2 minutes or so, but the cheese is nice and melty and these tops are getting toasted. So you might get, you know, the little browning around the edges here, and then we just place it right on top. And here we go. Here's our final sandwich. That's it. As soon as they're out of the oven, they are ready. And I'm just going to cut into this. Try not to get, I mean, look at that. Ooh, cheesy. All right. So just a bite for taste. Oh, man. I don't know about Pat's or Genos. I know they're pretty good. These are really good too, guys. They may be better than takeout. Make them at home, and they're gonna be way cheaper than if you got them for takeout. No offense, Pat or Gino. I'm sure you guys are gonna still be in plenty of business when people make these at home. So I hope you try it, guys. I hope you love them. If you do, like and subscribe to the channel for more recipes like this. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.